r/AITA for refusing to pay my BIL's $8,000 vet bill after HR exposed him? Hashtag chunk 1. My hands were literally shaking as I closed the HR office door behind me. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Patricia from HR had said, her voice dripping with the kind of sympathy they probably teach in management training courses. We've documented everything. You're not crazy. This has been happening for over a year. Over a year. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the manila folder they'd given me. Inside were emails, chat logs, meeting notes, a meticulously compiled timeline of betrayal. My brother-in-law, Derek, had been systematically spreading lies about me to anyone who would listen. Not just office gossip either. We're talking calculated, strategic character assassination. Asterisk, she's not actually qualified for that project. She got lucky on her last one, asterisk. Asterisk, I've heard she has serious personal issues. She's been hospitalized before, asterisk, completely false. By the way, I'd gone to therapy once in college, and somehow that became psychiatric hospitalization in Derek's narrative. She's sleeping with someone in upper management for preferential treatment. That one actually made me feel sick. The worst part? He'd been whispering these lies directly to my boss's ear at every opportunity. Coffee breaks. Gym sessions. Derek belonged to the same country club as my manager. He'd weaponized proximity. I'd been so confused these past 18 months. Why didn't I get the promotion I was promised? Why did conversation stop when I entered the break room? Why did that new colleague, Marcus, treat me like I had 3 heads when we first met? It all suddenly made horrible, crystalline sense. My phone buzzed. Asterisk, call me ASAP. It's an emergency, asterisk. My sister, Kelly. I didn't call her back immediately. I sat there, engine running, playing through the conversation I knew was coming. Kelly would be calling about money. She always did when things got tight. And this time, it would be about Derek's golden retriever, Max. Kelly had mentioned last week that he'd been limping, but they were waiting to see if it resolved on its own because vet bills are insane right now. Apparently, it hadn't resolved. Probably something requiring surgery. My phone buzzed again. Asterisk, please. Max needs emergency surgery. $8,000. We don't have it. Derek's business is slow. I know I'm asking a lot, but we're desperate, asterisk. There it was. I stared at the text for a long time. The words in the folder started swimming in my vision. All those lies. All that calculated damage to my reputation, my career, my sense of self-worth. I'd been questioning myself for 18 months. Was I incompetent? Did I have hidden personal issues affecting my work? Was I imagining the cold shoulders? No. I wasn't. And now Derek needed me. Not Derek himself, obviously. Derek would never ask me for anything. But his wife, my sister, my only sibling who I actually cared about, was now begging me to save the family dog's life. The irony was so sharp it felt weaponized. I've always prided myself on being the responsible one. The one who had her life together. Kelly was the free spirit who married early and left her career to support Derek's business ventures, which, in retrospect, might explain why they were now broke. He apparently spent his time sabotaging his sister-in-law instead of running his company. But I'd been there for her. Loans when they needed them, advice, emotional support, babysitting their 2 kids, Emma and Tyler, on holidays. And while I was doing all that, Derek was systematically destroying my professional reputation. I pulled up Patricia's email on my phone. She'd outlined the next steps. There would be a formal meeting with Derek, HR would inform my boss of the situation, and there'd be recommendations for disciplinary action. But Patricia had also made it clear that how I chose to proceed was up to me. I could request termination. I could pursue further action. Or I could accept Derek's eventual apology, assuming he even offered one. My phone buzzed again. Asterisk, the surgery is tomorrow morning. We need to let them know by 8 a.m. Please. I'm begging you. Max will die without it. He's only 6. He's such a good boy. Please, please help us, asterisk. The desperation in those text messages was palpable even through the screen. Kelly and those kids love that dog. I'd been to their house enough to see it. Max slept on Emma's bed. He waited by the door when they left for school. He was family. But so was Kelly. And Derek had decided that hurting me was more important than protecting the people who actually cared about him. Here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. There's a moment right after you learn about it where you have this strange power. A window of opportunity. You can respond from a place of hurt and anger, or you can do the right thing and let it go. Most people would tell you that forgiveness is the answer. That taking the high road is always the better option. Most people aren't in my position. I could help them. I could transfer the $8,000 right now. Max would get his surgery. Kelly would get her baby back. And Derek would never know that I knew. Because Kelly, loyal Kelly, probably wouldn't even tell him that she'd asked me. She'd let him believe they'd somehow scraped together the money, or that some miracle had occurred. Or I could tell Kelly exactly why I couldn't help them. I could detail everything Derek had done. I could watch my sister's world crack open as she realized that the man she'd married, the father of her children, had spent a year of his life systematically lying about her sister. I could force Derek to face consequences. Real ones. The kind that didn't come from HR or my boss's disappointment, but from his own wife. I could let Max suffer. And that thought made me feel sick in a way that the rumors never did. My hands were still shaking as I stared at my phone, Kelly's desperate texts glowing in the screen, waiting for my response. What kind of person was I about to become? Hashtag chump 2. I called Kelly back. Not to give her an answer, but because I couldn't sit in my car anymore. The parking lot felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on all the different versions of myself I could become in the next 24 hours. She picked up on the first ring. Oh my God, thank God, Kelly gasped. Did you get my texts? The vet said if we don't do the surgery by tomorrow morning, his spleen could rupture and... I got them, I said quietly. I'm reading them right now. What exactly happened to Max? I wasn't stalling. I genuinely needed details. Maybe there was a way out of this that didn't involve me making a choice that would destroy my family. Maybe the surgery wasn't actually necessary. Maybe there was another option. I was grasping at something, anything that would let me off the hook. He's been limping for 2 weeks, remember I mentioned it? Well, this morning he just collapsed. He wouldn't get up. He was whimpering and wouldn't eat. I rushed him to the emergency vet and they did an ultrasound and her voice cracked. They said he has a splenic mass. A tumor. It could rupture at any time and he'll bleed out internally. The surgery is the only way to save him. A tumor. Not something that could be managed with rest or medication. Not something that was Derek's negligence catching up with him. Just bad luck. The kind of random, unfair tragedy that happens to good dogs and devastates families. How much did they say it costs? I asked, even though I already knew. $8,243. Exactly. I asked if we could do a payment plan and they said they don't offer that for emergency surgeries. They want it up front or they won't schedule him. Kelly's voice had taken on that desperate, high-pitched quality it got when she was about to cry. Derek's already calling around trying to get a personal loan, but with his business being slow, nobody will approve him in time. I've maxed out my credit cards. My mom can't help, and Dad's in that situation with his new wife where everything's complicated. I didn't know who else to call. You're the only one who ever has money saved up. The accusation in that last sentence wasn't intentional, but I felt it anyway. Asterisk, you're the responsible one. You're the one with savings. You're the one who's always there, asterisk. Yes. I was. And I built those savings by making smart choices. By not marrying someone who ran a struggling business. By not having 2 kids on a limited income. By being careful and disciplined and doing everything right. Where's Derek now? I asked. He's driving around trying to find a lender. He's been on the phone for hours. He's really upset. He loves Max so much, and she paused. Actually, he doesn't know I'm calling you. He said we should just accept that it might not work out, that we need to prepare ourselves, but I can't. I can't just let our dog die. There has to be another way. I closed my eyes. Derek didn't know she was calling me. Of course he didn't. Derek, who spent the last year poisoning the well of my professional reputation, who told people I'd been hospitalized for psychiatric reasons, who suggested I was sleeping my way up the corporate ladder, that Derek was currently driving around trying to find a way to save his dog's life. That Derek, in this moment, was the victim. Kelly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly. Okay, she said cautiously. What? Has Derek ever mentioned me at work? Like, has he ever talked to you about things I've supposedly done or said? There was a long silence. Too long. What do you mean? Kelly asked finally, but her voice had changed. It had gone carefully neutral in the way it did when she was protecting something. Just answer the question. Has he said negative things about me to people at his workplace or his gym or anywhere? Why are you asking me this right now? Kelly's voice climbed higher. Max is literally dying and you're asking me about Derek's gossip? Is this about that thing Marcus said at the Christmas party? Because Derek said that was all just misunderstanding and... What thing Marcus said? I don't know, something about you being... I don't remember exactly. Derek said it was taken out of context and that Marcus was just joking around. Why does this matter right now? Can you help us or not? I could feel the family machinery starting to operate. The same machinery that had let Derek's behavior slide for the past year without anyone questioning it. The machinery that assumed Derek was trustworthy and that I was probably misunderstanding or overreacting or being too sensitive. The machinery that was now going to force me to choose between being the villain in one narrative or the villain in another. I need to tell you something, I said. Not now, Kelly interrupted, and there was an edge to her voice I'd rarely heard. Not now. Whatever it is, it can wait 24 hours. My dog is dying. My marriage is falling apart because Derek's stressed and I'm stressed, and my kids have been asking me all day if Max is going to die, and the only thing I can think about is whether we're going to have to tell them goodbye to their best friend. So unless you're calling to tell me you can help us, I don't want to hear it. I felt something collapse inside my chest. She was right. This wasn't the time. But that was the trap, wasn't it? There would never be a good time to tell her. There would always be some reason to wait, some crisis or special occasion or vulnerable moment that made it seem cruel to drop this information on her head. How much could you help with? Kelly asked, her voice smaller now. We don't need all 8,000. If you could do even half, we could figure out the rest. Derek's calling his dad right now. Maybe we could. I'll call you back in an hour, I said. After I've thought about this. Okay, Kelly said, and I could hear the hope bloom in that single word. She thought I was going to help. She thought the difficult part was over, that it was just a matter of me determining how much I could contribute. I hung up and sat in my car as the sun started to set over the parking lot, turning everything the color blood orange. In my lap was the manila folder from HR. In my hand was my phone, with Kelly's desperate text still glowing on the screen. And somewhere across town, Derek was probably sitting in a bank or a lending office, listening to someone tell him that they couldn't approve his emergency loan fast enough. I wondered if he was thinking about me at all. #chunk3. I didn't call back in an hour. I sat in my car for 3 hours, watching the parking lot empty out as people left work. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from Kelly, then a call from an unknown number that went to voicemail, then more texts. I didn't look at them. Instead, I pulled the HR folder back out and reread the investigator's notes. The careful, clinical language documenting Derek's pattern. How he'd told someone in his CrossFit gym that I'd been let go from my previous job for performance issues. How he'd mentioned to his business partner's wife that I was going through a manic episode and that my family was worried about me. How someone had overheard him at a restaurant saying I'd gotten my promotion by sleeping with someone in upper management. Each accusation was documented. Each source was cited. Each lie had been traced back to him like breadcrumbs he deliberately laid. The investigator had even included a timeline. Derek had started this exactly 14 months ago. 2 weeks after I'd been promoted to senior analyst. 2 weeks after that promotion had put me at the same professional level as him, technically, even though our fields were completely different and there was no actual rivalry between us. 2 weeks after his own business had started struggling. I thought about that detail now. Derek's failing business. The slow drip of financial pressure. The way that might have corroded him from the inside out, made him bitter, made him look for someone to blame. Made him look at his successful sister-in-law and see everything he wasn't. Was that an excuse? No. But it was context. And context mattered when you were deciding whether to destroy someone's life. My phone rang again. This time it was my husband, Marcus. Where are you? He asked. You've been gone for 5 hours. Still at work, I lied. Had to stay late. I'll be home soon. Kelly called me, Marcus said. His voice was tight. She's asking if we can help with Max's surgery. She said you're thinking about it. Of course Kelly had called him. She was probably working the family angles, trying to find multiple entry points. Trying to make sure that even if I said no, someone would say yes. I'm still deciding, I said. How much would we be talking? 8,000. Marcus was quiet. He knew what 8,000 meant to us. It meant dipping into our emergency fund. It meant we'd have to rebuild it over the next year or so. It meant being vulnerable in a way we'd carefully tried not to be. It also meant saving a dog's life and keeping his sister's family from financial devastation. We can do it, Marcus said finally. I mean, it's not ideal, but we can do it. Kelly's family. I know, I said. So what's the problem? This was the moment. The moment where I could tell him everything. Where I could say, your brother-in-law has spent the last year destroying my reputation and nearly cost me the promotion I worked so hard for, so I'm refusing to help his family because I think he deserves to suffer. But I'd already decided I couldn't do that to Kelly right now. And saying it to Marcus would just shift the problem. Now he'd have to choose between his brother-in-law and his wife, and that wasn't fair either. No problem, I said. I'm just thinking through the logistics. Well, think fast. They need the money tomorrow morning. After I hung up, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and finally looked at the text messages. Kelly, asterisk, can you call me back? Please, asterisk. Kelly, asterisk, I know this is hard. But Max is family too, asterisk. Kelly, asterisk, please. Please help us, asterisk. Kelly, asterisk, Derek's dad said he might be able to help but he's not sure. We won't know until tomorrow. If you could at least do something, anything, it would help us bridge the gap, asterisk. Then, sent 20 minutes ago, a different message. Derek, asterisk, Kelly told me you're considering helping. Thank you. I know we haven't always been close. This means a lot, asterisk. I stared at that message for a long time. He didn't know that I knew. He thought he was safe. He thought whatever he'd done was over and past, that the rumors had faded, that nobody had connected the dots back to him. He thought the person he'd been trying to destroy was now going to save his dog's life. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I could help. I could be the hero. I could save the day and watch Derek's face when he realized that the woman he tried to ruin had paid to keep his beloved dog alive. I could hold that over him forever. I could use it as leverage, as proof of my superior moral character. I could let him live with the knowledge of exactly how terrible he'd been and how much better I was than him. That would be worse than refusing, actually. That would be its own kind of cruelty. Or I could refuse. I could tell Kelly why. I could let the truth detonate in the middle of her marriage and her family and her financial crisis. I could watch Derek lose everything and know that I'd chosen that ending. Both options made me a villain. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Your sister is very upset, she said without preamble. She's crying. The children are upset. Derek is out in the garage, presumably having some kind of breakdown. And I don't know what's going on, but you're apparently the linchpin that determines whether their dog lives or dies tomorrow. Mom. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm telling you what I see. Now, do you want to tell me what this is actually about? Because Kelly says it's about money, but the way she says it doesn't sound like it's about money. I gripped the phone harder. My mother had always been able to see through to the actual problem underneath the stated one. It was infuriating and helpful in equal measure. There's something I found out about Derek, I said slowly. Something he did. Something deliberately cruel. Ah, my mother said. And just that one syllable carried understanding. She knew what it meant when I used that particular tone, when I was hurt and angry and trying to figure out if I had a right to be. And now you're trying to decide if you should punish him for it by refusing to help when he needs you. When his dog needs help, I corrected. When his dog needs help, my mother agreed. Which will punish him. But also punish Kelly. And the children. And the dog. I know, I said quietly. The question isn't whether Derek deserves this, my mother continued. The question is whether you can live with being the person who lets it happen. Not who causes it, he caused it by running his business into the ground. But who lets it play out, knowing you could stop it. I closed my eyes. Call your sister back, my mother said gently. Then call me and tell me what you've decided. But decide based on who you want to be, not on what he deserves. She hung up before I could respond. And I sat there in my car, in the dark parking lot, finally ready to make a choice. #chunk4. I sat in the car for another 15 minutes, my phone dark in my lap. My mother's words kept circling back, the way they always did. Decide based on who you want to be, not on what he deserves. The problem was that I wasn't sure who I wanted to be anymore. For the past year, I thought I was someone competent and professional and good at her job. Turns out, I was also someone who could nurture a fantasy of revenge so detailed and crystalline that it had its own gravitational pull. I called Kelly back. She answered on the first ring, which told me she'd been sitting by the phone. Her voice was swollen from crying. Hi. Hi, thank you for calling back. Did Mom call you? She's been trying to help, but I think she's just making things worse because now Derek knows something's wrong and he won't tell me what in. Kelly. Stop. I'm coming over. We need to talk. You're coming here? Does that mean, are you going to help us? Her voice cracked on the last word. I'm coming to talk, I said. That's all I can promise right now. The drive to her house took 40 minutes. It was in the suburbs, a 3-bedroom colonial that they'd stretched themselves to buy 5 years ago. She and Derek had been so proud of it. I'd been proud for them too, back when I didn't know what he was doing behind my back. When I pulled up, the garage door was open. Derek was visible in the harsh fluorescent lighting, sitting on a workbench with his head in his hands. He looked up when he heard my car, and I saw hope flicker across his face before confusion replaced it. He stood up, started toward me. I went straight to the front door instead. Kelly was waiting in the entryway, her face blotchy and exhausted. She was still in her work clothes, which meant she'd probably come straight from her job as an accountant at a small firm downtown. She made decent money, but not the kind that absorbed $8,000 emergencies without bleeding. Behind her, I could see the kitchen, the living room beyond. Everything was neat and organized, the way Kelly kept her spaces. There was a framed photo of Max on the bookshelf, their golden retriever, who'd been part of their family for 8 years. Max is at the emergency clinic, Kelly said without preamble. They're doing stabilizing treatment tonight, but he needs surgery tomorrow morning. Abdominal obstruction. He ate something he shouldn't have, probably a toy that got knocked under the couch. The vet says if we don't do the surgery, his organs will start failing. They give him until tomorrow afternoon, maybe, before it becomes critical. I nodded. I'd already known most of this from the earlier phone calls, but I let her get it all out. She needed to talk. Our savings is gone. The business has been, she stopped, struggled. The business has been bad. Worse than Derek's been telling people. Worse than he's been telling me, I think. We used what we had for payroll last month. And his dad offered to help, but he's dealing with his own stuff, and she looked at me with red, desperate eyes. I know this is a lot to ask. I know we're not close. But Max is innocent in all of this, and the kids are innocent, and I don't know what else to do. This was the crucial moment. I could tell her everything right now. I could explain about the HR investigation, about Derek's lies, about the timeline that showed him starting this right after my promotion. I could watch her face as it all registered, the betrayal, the calculated cruelty, the realization that her husband had spent over a year actively trying to destroy my professional reputation for reasons that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with his own failures. Or I could do what my mother had suggested. Make a choice based on character, not revenge. Can we sit down? I asked. We went into the living room. Kelly curled up on one end of the couch, and I sat on the other end. Through the window, I could see Derek still in the garage. He'd gone back to the workbench, but he was watching the house. I need to tell you something, I said. And I need you to know that I'm telling you because I love you, and because I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening. Kelly's face went pale. Oh God. Is this about Derek and someone at his gym? Because someone told me he was, but he said it was nothing, just. No. It's not about an affair. I took a breath. It's about what he's been doing to me. I told her everything. I showed her the HR folder on my phone, the investigator had sent me scanned copies. I read her the timeline, the documented lies, the sources and citations. I watched her face move through disbelief, then anger, then something worse, understanding. The moment she realized that her husband had done this deliberately, systematically, for over a year. But why, she whispered. You two barely even interact. You're not competitors for anything. Why would he? I got promoted, I said quietly. And his business was struggling. And sometimes people just need someone to blame. Kelly stood up abruptly and walked to the window. I could see her looking out at Derek in the garage. Her hand went to the glass like she wanted to press through it, reach him, or maybe push him away. It was hard to tell. How long have you known? She asked. I found out this morning. From HR. They investigated because one of my colleagues noticed a pattern and reported it. I've been in my car for hours trying to figure out what to do about it. Kelly turned back to me. And you were thinking of not helping. Because of what he did. I didn't answer, which was answer enough. But you came here anyway, Kelly said. She sat back down. You drove 40 minutes to tell me in person instead of just refusing and letting it blow up. I'm trying to be a better person than he was, I said. Or than I was being. It's a work in progress. Kelly put her face in her hands. When she looked up again, her eyes were wet. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information. I don't know if I'm supposed to throw him out, or scream at him, or demand he apologize to you, or, God, I don't know. That's not my decision, I said. That's between you two. But I thought you should know what you're dealing with before you make any decisions about your life. And the money? Kelly asked. For Max? I took out my phone and opened my banking app. I'm going to help, I said. Not for Derek. Not because he deserves it. But because Max doesn't deserve to suffer for his owner's character flaws. And because I don't want to be the person who lets that happen. I transferred $5,000 before I could second-guess myself. That's my contribution. Marcus will probably do the other 3. Call the clinic and tell them to start prep for morning surgery. Kelly stared at the notification on her screen. Why? She asked. After what he did, why would you? Because my mother asked me who I wanted to be, I said. And the answer is, not him. #chunk5. The drive home felt longer than the drive there. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I had to pull over twice just to breathe. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I told Kelly everything, shown her the evidence, transferred the money, and walked out while Derek was still in the garage, still confused, still unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollowed out. My phone started buzzing before I even made it back onto the highway. First, a text from Marcus, Kelly just called me crying. What the hell happened, then another, she told me about Derek. Holy shit. I'm wiring $3,000 right now, Then, nothing for a while. Then everything all at once. A call from my mother. I didn't answer. 3 texts from my work friend Sophia, asking if I was okay because Derek had apparently shown up at the office around 5 p.m. He didn't work there, so this was notable, and had been pacing in the parking lot looking unhinged. A text from a number I didn't recognize, asterisk this is Derek. We need to talk, asterisk then another, asterisk Kelly won't even look at me. What did you tell her, asterisk then another, you had no right. I turned my phone to silent. When I got home, my apartment felt too quiet and too small. I made tea and didn't drink it. I turned on Netflix and didn't watch it. I sat on my couch in the dark and let my brain do what brains do when they're trying to process the fact that you fundamentally altered someone's life, even if they deserved it. Around 9 p.m., my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. On the 4th call, I answered. Don't, I said before she could speak. I'm not going to say I told you so, she said, and something about her tone made me realize she already knew everything. But I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them honestly. Mom. Did Kelly call you back? Yes. And? She's not leaving him. Not yet, anyway. She said she needs time to process, but she's already making excuses for him. He had a bad childhood, his business is struggling, he was jealous, he wasn't in a good headspace. I heard the bitterness in my own voice and hated it. The usual. But she knew. She knows the truth now. She does. And you helped with the dog surgery. I did. My mother was quiet for a moment. So you made a choice that honored your integrity instead of your anger. That's good. That's actually really good. Is it? I laughed, and it came out wrong, too sharp, too desperate. Because Derek is apparently losing his mind, and Kelly is defending him, and I'm sitting here feeling like I've set off a bomb and now I have to live with the fallout. That's the thing about bombs, my mother said softly. Even when they need to go off, you still feel the concussion. I didn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I got another text from Derek, asterisk you're going to regret this. You just destroyed my marriage and for what, asterisk and then, minutes later, a text from a number I realized was Kelly, even though she'd changed her message, asterisk I told him to give you space. He's very upset. I'm very upset. But thank you for the money. Max will be okay, asterisk. Around 4 a.m., there was a knock on my apartment door. I almost didn't open it. I looked through the peephole and saw Derek standing in my hallway, hair disheveled, wearing a jacket that looked like he'd thrown it on in the dark. He looked devastated, which on some level satisfied the vindictive part of me I was trying very hard to suppress. It's 4 in the morning, I said through the door, not opening it. I know. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't, he stopped, started again. Is it true? Did you really go to HR and manufacture this whole thing? I didn't go to HR. A colleague noticed you were spreading lies about me and reported it. HR investigated and confirmed it. I didn't manufacture anything. Because I made a few comments? Because I vented to people? That doesn't justify. Kelly is looking at me like I'm a stranger. My kids asked this morning why mommy was crying. What was I supposed to tell them? I opened the door. It was probably a mistake, but I did it anyway. You were supposed to not spend over a year deliberately spreading false rumors about my professional competence, I said calmly. You were supposed to not try to sabotage my career because you were jealous about a promotion I earned. You were supposed to not be a vindictive, pathetic person who can't handle other people's success. I wasn't. He looked like I'd struck him. I was frustrated. You got this amazing opportunity and my business was falling apart and nobody seemed to notice or care, and then you were at every family dinner talking about your work, your success, So that justified lying about me? I didn't think it would. I didn't think anyone would actually. He ran his hands through his hair. Kelly says you showed her everything. That you have proof. I do. And she won't talk to me. She asked me to sleep in the guest room. She looked at me and I could see her calculating, like she was trying to figure out who I am. Like I'm someone she doesn't recognize. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him. Part of me did, actually, which made it worse. Because feeling sorry didn't change what he'd done. It didn't erase the panic I'd felt every time my boss acted distant, or the paranoia that had eaten at me when opportunities started drying up, or the humiliation of having to show my own mother that my brother-in-law had spent a year telling people I wasn't qualified for my own job. I don't know what you want me to say, I told him. I want you to untell her. I want you to say it was a misunderstanding, or you were exaggerating, or... I'm not going to do that. Why not? For Kelly? For the kids? No, I said. I'm not going to do that for Kelly, and I'm definitely not going to do that for you. Kelly deserves to know who she married. And your kids deserve to grow up in a house where their father is honest about his actions instead of making excuses for them. Derek looked like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he just stood there in my hallway at 4 a.m., looking completely lost, and I realized that this exact moment, was when I was supposed to feel triumphant. But I didn't. I just felt tired. #chunk6. I closed the door on Derek without another word. I heard him stand there for another minute or two. I could see his shadow under the door, and then his footsteps retreated down the hallway. I locked the deadbolt, then the chain, then stood with my forehead against the cool wood until my heartbeat slowed. The sun was starting to come up when I finally gave up on sleep entirely. I showered, made actual coffee instead of tea I wouldn't drink, and tried to convince myself that this was over. That I'd done the right thing, and now I could move forward. My phone had been silent for about 3 hours, which should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like the quiet before something worse. It came at 7:47 a.m. in the form of a text from a number I didn't recognize. * This is Jennifer Chen from your company's legal department. Please call me at your earliest convenience regarding an employment matter. *. My stomach dropped. I called immediately. Ms. Morgan, thank you for getting back to me so quickly, Jennifer said in that specific corporate tone that means nothing good. I wanted to inform you that we received a complaint this morning from Derek Matthews alleging that you fabricated evidence as part of a coordinated harassment campaign against him. He's claiming that the rumors he allegedly spread were either exaggerated or taken out of context, and that you manipulated the investigation for personal gain. That's not, I started, but she kept going. He's also claiming that your recent financial assistance to his family was conditional on him remaining silent about the real story, and that you threatened to withhold that assistance if he contradicts your narrative. I didn't threaten anything. I paid for his dog's surgery because I stopped. Because why? Because my mother asked me who I wanted to be? That was going to sound insane in a legal context. I understand, Jennifer said, and she actually sounded sympathetic. However, we now have what's being framed as a he said she said situation, which complicates the original investigation. We're going to need to conduct a follow-up interview with you, and we'll need documentation of any communications between you and Mr. Matthews regarding the surgery payment. I spent 20 minutes on that call providing what amounted to a legal CYA conversation. Yes, I had the texts. No, I hadn't made any threats. Yes, I had offered to pay for the surgery. No, there were no conditions attached. Yes, I understood this looked complicated. When I hung up, my hands were shaking again. My work phone started buzzing around 9 a.m. A calendar invite from my manager, Sandra, urgent meeting at 10 a.m., my office, no additional context. I spent that hour catastrophizing in ways I hadn't allowed myself to since the original promotion nearly fell through. What if Derek's counter-narrative was somehow convincing? What if people thought I'd weaponized the HR system? What if this somehow made me look worse than him? Sandra's office was on the 3rd floor. I'd been in there dozens of times, but today it felt different. She was already on a call when I arrived, so I stood awkwardly in her doorway until she waved me in and muted her speaker. HR briefed me, she said without preamble. I wanted to hear from you directly. I didn't fabricate anything, I said. The evidence HR found is real. Derek's been sending. I know. I believe you. She leaned back in her chair. But I also need to be realistic about what we're dealing with. Derek Matthews is now claiming he's being persecuted, and he's apparently reached out to a lawyer. He's threatening to sue the company for conducting a biased investigation, and he's threatening a lawsuit against you personally for defamation. That's insane. It is, Sandra agreed. But it's also time-consuming and expensive to defend against, even when the claims are baseless. And more importantly, it's now a distraction for the entire department. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Are you asking me to? No. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm informing you of the situation so you're prepared. HR will defend the investigation. We'll provide you with contact information for the company's legal team, who will work with your personal legal counsel if it comes to that. You did nothing wrong. But saying I did nothing wrong and actually believing it felt like two different things. By noon, the story had somehow already made it to the rumor mill at the office. I could feel the shift in how people interacted with me, the slightly longer pauses before responses, the careful way conversations ended when I approached. People were choosing sides, or at least choosing caution. I got a text from Sophia, asterisk girl, what is happening? Is Derek actually suing you? Because half the office is saying he is asterisk. A call from my mother, which I answered immediately, what's wrong? Did something happen? Derek's threatening legal action against me and the company, I said flatly. He's claiming I fabricated evidence and paid him off to stay quiet. He's in full crisis mode. My mother's voice shifted into something calmer, more analytical. What does Kelly say? I realized I hadn't heard from Kelly all morning. I don't know. I haven't checked. I hung up with my mother and scrolled back through my messages. Nothing new from Kelly since the brief text at 4 a.m. But there were 3 new messages from a number that had to be Derek's mother-in-law, Kelly's mother, that had arrived while I was in Sandra's office. Your behavior is completely unacceptable. You've humiliated my grandson's father in front of the entire family. Kelly is devastated and Derek is speaking to an attorney because of your lies. I didn't respond to any of them. That evening, I was sitting in my apartment with every window blind drawn when my doorbell rang. I nearly didn't answer it. But when I looked through the peephole, it was Kelly, alone. I opened the door. She looked like she hadn't slept, which made 2 of us. Her eyes were red-rimmed and her hair was in a messy bun, and she was wearing what looked like Derek's hoodie, which seemed like a painful contradiction. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside to let her in. #Chunk7. Kelly sat on my couch like someone had placed her there without her agreement. She didn't take off her shoes. She didn't ask for water. She just sat, staring at her hands, and I realized I had no idea what I was supposed to do in this moment. I know, she said finally. You know what? I asked, even though I was pretty sure I knew exactly what. Everything. The rumors. The investigation. Derek's lawyer. All of it. She looked up at me, and her eyes were a mess, angry and hurt and something else I couldn't quite name. Your mom called me this morning. She thought I should hear it from family instead of from Derek's version or from gossip. Of course she did. My mother had probably spent the last hour strategizing which family member needed to know what, and in what order. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I didn't want this to come out this way. I didn't want it to come out at all if I'm being honest. Kelly laughed, but there was nothing happy in it. That's interesting, because Derek said you were weaponizing it. That you were trying to destroy him. That you paid for the surgery as some kind of setup to make him look bad when you refused to help with the rest. That's not. I know it's not. She cut me off sharply. I know Derek. I've been married to him for 8 years. I know how he sounds when he's lying, and I know how he sounds when he's panicking. And right now he's doing both. She pulled her knees up to her chest, hugging herself. He's been lying to me about this for over a year. A year, and I had no idea he was spreading rumors about you. No idea he was so angry about the promotion thing that he decided to blow up your professional reputation. Kelly. Let me finish. Her voice was sharp enough to cut. I let him sit at my dinner table and complain about his job. I let him say things were unfair. I listened to him vent about how politics were ruining the company and how people like you got ahead because you knew how to play the game. And all along, he was actively sabotaging you. He was making phone calls and sending emails and lying to people about what you'd said or done. He turned himself into exactly the thing he claimed to hate. I didn't say anything because there wasn't anything that wouldn't make it worse. So here's what I need to know, Kelly continued, finally looking directly at me. Did you pay for the surgery to set him up? Did you know HR had already done their investigation and you were paying for it knowing he'd look bad and then you'd refuse to help and it would prove what a terrible person he is? The directness of it hit like a punch. No, I said, and it was true. I paid for the surgery because you called me desperate and scared, and because I didn't want your dog to suffer. That's it. I didn't know Derek had already made things worse with his counter-complaint. But you knew he'd done the rumors. Yes. But. And you knew he'd done them intentionally to hurt you. Yes. So when you paid for the surgery, Kelly said, her voice getting quieter instead of louder, which was somehow worse, you were being nice to his wife and his kids while being fully aware that he'd been cruel to you. That's not just the high road, that's like, the stratosphere. I felt something crack open in my chest. I was angry. I wanted to do the right thing even though I wanted to do the petty thing. I thought if I was just good, then maybe it would matter. And then you told him you wouldn't help with the rest. He came to my apartment at 4 a.m. and asked me to lie. To tell you it was a misunderstanding. I couldn't do that. Kelly was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother is telling everyone that you're the reason my marriage is falling apart. She's saying you sabotaged Derek and then weaponized the investigation. She's apparently telling Derek's mother that you always had it out for him because you were jealous of how happy we were. That's not. I know. Kelly's voice was exhausted. I told her she was being insane. I told her Derek did this to himself. But you know what? It doesn't matter what I tell her, because now it's a narrative and narratives spread faster than facts. My phone had been buzzing periodically all evening. I'd been ignoring it, but now I wondered if Kelly had seen the same messages I had. The company-wide email thread from someone in accounting asking for clarification about recent personnel matters. The Slack messages where people were openly speculating. The Instagram story from someone in marketing that was ostensibly about integrity in the workplace but was obviously about me. Derek wants me to support him through the lawsuit, Kelly said. He says if I don't, then I'm choosing you over him. My mother agrees. She thinks I should stand by my husband. What do you think? I asked carefully. I think my husband spent a year lying to my face, Kelly said. I think he damaged your career because he was petty and angry and couldn't handle his own disappointments. I think he came to your apartment at 4 a.m. and tried to manipulate you into covering for him. And I think now that he's facing actual consequences, he's decided the answer is to escalate and bring lawyers into it and make it everyone else's problem. She stood up abruptly. He's moved into a hotel. He said he needed space to think, but I think what he actually needed was to not face the fact that I'm not going to pretend this is your fault. Kelly, I'm sorry. Don't be, she said, and she sounded hollow. You did the right things. You paid for the surgery. You refused to lie. You told me the truth. I'm the one who has to figure out what I do with a husband who thought all of that was somehow an attack on him. She moved toward my door, then paused. The kids are asking why their dad isn't home. I told them he was working late. I'm not ready to tell them the real answer yet. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready. I'm sorry, I said again, uselessly. I know, Kelly said. That's what makes this so much worse. #Chunk8. After Kelly left, I sat in the dark for hours. My phone kept buzzing, messages from Mom, from Aunt Patricia asking what I'd done, from colleagues asking if I was okay, from people I hadn't talked to in years suddenly reaching out because the rumor mill had shifted and now I was either a hero who'd exposed a saboteur or a villain who destroyed a marriage, depending on who was telling the story. I turned it off. The thing about revenge fantasies is that they look so clean in your head. You imagine the moment when someone faces the consequences of their actions, and in your mind, there's a satisfying resolution. Justice is served. Balance is restored. You win. But sitting in my dark apartment, I realized that's not how any of this actually worked. Derek was in a hotel room, probably furious and plotting his next move. Kelly was at home with 2 kids who didn't understand why their father wasn't there. My mother was disappointed in me for not handling it better, which seemed to me not exposing Derek at all. My sister's marriage was imploding. And I was sitting in the dark feeling like I'd swallowed broken glass. I'd done the right things. Everyone kept saying that. I'd paid for the surgery. I'd refused to lie. I'd told the truth. And somehow, all of those right things had conspired to blow up my family in ways I'd never anticipated when I was angry enough to want Derek to suffer. The surgery had been the turning point. I see that now. When Kelly called at 2 a.m., desperate and scared, I had 2 choices, help or refuse. I chose to help because at that moment, I wasn't the version of myself that was fantasizing about consequences. I was just someone who'd been asked for help and could give it. But then Derek showed up at my apartment. Then he asked me to lie. And in that moment, something shifted. I could have taken the high road all the way, paid for the surgery and then also helped with the rest, letting Derek off entirely, knowing that he'd hurt me but choosing kindness anyway. That would have been the actual high road. Instead, I'd drawn a line. I'd refused to lie. And while I'd told myself it was about integrity, I think there was something else underneath. I think there was a part of me that wanted him to face what he'd done. That wanted someone to finally call him out. That wanted him to lose something the way he tried to make me lose things. The fact that what he lost was his marriage, not because of what he'd done to me, but because of what he'd done to Kelly and their kids, that was something I hadn't accounted for. That was collateral damage I'd been willing to accept when I was angry, but couldn't accept now that I was looking at the actual wreckage. My phone buzzed again. I turned it back on, unable to resist. It was a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Derek. Stop spreading lies about me. You've destroyed my family, asterisk. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called my mother. We need to talk about how we handle this, I said when she answered, her voice thick with sleep. And we need to do it before it gets worse. Worse? She spluttered. It's already completely out of control. Your aunt is barely speaking to me. Derek's mother called me names I didn't even know existed, and now half the family thinks you're a vengeful harpy and the other half thinks you're Joan of Arc. I know, I said. And I need to do something about it. The next morning, I sent Derek a message, asterisk we need to talk. Not with lawyers. Not with mothers. Just us, asterisk. He didn't respond until the following day. Why would I agree to that? Because I want to end this, I wrote back. Asterisk not win it. End it asterisk. We met at a coffee shop neither of us had ever been to before, neutral territory, public enough that neither of us would do anything we'd regret later. Derek looked like he hadn't slept. He also looked smaller somehow, like the anger that had been propping him up had suddenly deflated. I'm not going to apologize, he said before I could speak. What I did was, I was angry and I handled it badly, but I'm not sorry for being angry. I'm not asking you to be sorry, I said. I'm asking you to listen. And then I told him something I probably should have said a long time ago. You hurt me. Really hurt me. And when I found out, I wanted you to hurt the same way. But I also paid for your dog's surgery. And I think those two things have been fighting inside me ever since. He didn't say anything. I could have let that dog die, I continued, and felt justified because of what you'd done. But I didn't, because that's not who I want to be. And then when you came to my apartment and asked me to lie, I refused. Not just because it was the right thing to do, but because I was angry. Because I wanted you to face consequences. You destroyed my marriage, Derek said flatly. No, I said, and I meant it. You destroyed your marriage when you decided to spend a year spreading rumors about me instead of just talking to someone about your anger. I didn't destroy it. I just didn't enable it. Derek's hands were shaking around his coffee cup. Kelly won't even look at me. The kids asked why I don't live at home anymore and I had to tell them that Daddy made some bad choices. I know, I said, and I did feel sorry. Even though I'd known this might happen, knowing it and experiencing it were different things. And that sucks. That sucks for all of you. So what do you want? He asked. You want me to grovel? You want me to admit you were right and I was wrong? I want you to go home, I said. I want you to go to Kelly and tell her the truth about everything, not to manipulate her into forgiving you, but to give her the actual facts so she can make decisions based on reality instead of lies. And I want you to get some help figuring out why you were so angry that you thought hurting me would make things better. And you? Derek asked. What are you getting out of this? Peace, I said simply. I'm getting my life back. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded, very slightly, and got up to leave. I stayed at the coffee shop for a while after he left, drinking coffee that had gone cold, thinking about the difference between being right and being kind, and how often those aren't the same thing. It took months for things to settle down. Derek and Kelly went to therapy. They're still together, though I don't know if together means what it used to mean. My family eventually stopped treating this like a scandal and started treating it like something that happened. The rumors at work died down, and my reputation slowly rebuilt itself, not because Derek took it back, but because people gradually forgot about it. And me? I learned that revenge tastes a lot better in your imagination than it does in real life. I learned that being the good person doesn't mean letting people walk over you, but it also doesn't mean being cruel when you have the power to be. I learned that sometimes the hardest thing isn't winning. It's knowing when to stop fighting.